Hello, I'm Judy Stiles. Thank you for joining us this week on Newsmakers. Our focus this week is financial aid at Missouri Southern. And of course, a lot of universities around the country are making plans for the fall semester. Summer session's underway. And today, hopefully, we'll answer some of the questions regarding financial aid. Joining me is the director, Becca Diskin. Thank you very much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Summer months, I imagine it's probably still pretty busy for your office on campus.
Yeah, summer is probably one of our busiest times of the year because we're not only working on year-end wrap-up from the prior year, but we also have a summer disbursement season, so there's lots of summer things going on, and then we're preparing to get everything ready for the fall semester in the upcoming school year. So it's kind of a perfect storm of all things that we do all happening at the same time.
Of course, you, like everyone else on campus, or have been on campus for about a month or so as we're recording this, after that transition of being off campus for a while. People might have some curiosity. What was it like working off campus? You were still able to meet the needs of the students, even though you may not have been in the office.
Yeah, my staff had to transition to a remote office environment, so we all went from working in one department suite to being in remote offices in our homes and having to collaborate and continue to work electronically through Teams or through Zoom and continue to collaborate and figure out how we're going to make things happen even though we weren't together. And so it took us about a week to get everything adjusted and everyone lined out and get accesses granted, and that worked out really well, and we were able to continue on and keep processing aid for our students.
And of course, during that time period, we heard about the CORES funding, the relief funding that tied into higher education. Explain a little bit for the audience what that meant, especially here at Missouri Southern for the students.
Yeah, we were fortunate to be able to apply pretty early for the Federal CARES Act grant, and our institution was able to receive funding in, I think, in the middle part of May. And so we were able to work internally with a team to decide how to best distribute those funds, and we got those funds out to about 90% of our students as quickly as we could, and then we still have a little bit left that we're still working on through the month of June, but we hope by the end of June we'll have all of that distributed to everybody who's eligible.
Share some thoughts or what people had to say when they found out they were getting the money. Did you get any personal feedback from students?
A few. I think a lot of questions in anticipation of the funds. Once you hear, through the media or in other federal venues that there are funds available for students, then they start asking questions of, does this apply to me, and how do I qualify, and where do I apply? And we really tried to make the process as easy as possible so that students didn't have to do a separate application. We confirmed their eligibility internally based on the guidelines set by the federal government, and then we just distributed the money to them so that they didn't have another hurdle and another step to take, because our students were all dispersed at that point everywhere too. They weren't all in the same location, and so we wanted to get it in their hands as quickly as possible. So I think overall the feedback was good.
Good. And you were able to distribute that money electronically for most cases?
For the most part, yeah. We were able to kind of get ahead of it and send some announcements ahead of time that we would encourage students to align their bank account with Missouri Southern's to make sure we could do an electronic refund if they hadn't done that already for their business with us. And if we weren't able to do an electronic refund, then we sent paper checks to them. So either way, they were able to get their money relatively quickly.
Great. Now that's behest. Now we're looking at the present and the future. Of course, summer session's underway, and summer session comes with opportunities for financial aid to help the students as well, correct?
Yeah, summer is what we call a trailer, so that's tacked on to the end of the 1920 school year. So it's kind of like a later semester that we work on for students after the fall and spring prior has already happened. So it's sometimes for students can be what's left over for the year that they haven't utilized. Sometimes we can be strategic about some additional funding, like through Pell Grant and things. If they take 6 hours, they can qualify for some additional money that the government's made available to them. But we try to be as creative as we can to let them know all the resources to stay in school for the summer and get ahead for the next year if possible.
Is that one of the big tasks for your department, just letting the students know what is available? And sometimes, people don't know what the opportunities are, I'd imagine.
Yeah, I think sometimes it can be overwhelming because they don't know where to begin. And the process itself has multiple steps to it. There isn't just a once and done usually with our office because you do have to reapply every year, and you do have to know certain deadlines for certain types of funding, and there's certain steps you have to take if you want a student loan, for example, that are above and beyond just the FAFSA application. And so there's always layers to what we do. And so I think internally we try to look a couple steps ahead for each student that may be coming in with one question, but they may need to know a few other things too to make sure that they've got things ready for the future, or that they're prepped and well prepared for whatever's coming.
Of course, this is the time of year where you may have those incoming students, the freshmen for the first time, and there's a lot of those unknowns perhaps for them. What do I do? And you have some handy resources. I know you have a website that talks about the how-tos.
Yeah, we've put together some quick and easy step-by-step instructions for not just incoming students, but anyone who needs a refresher because they haven't done it since last year. Step one is always the FAFSA, which is the free application for federal student aid. Yep. And the government application helps them apply for any grants from the federal government or the state of Missouri. All of that goes through the FAFSA application, and about 75 to 80% of our students will utilize some type of aid from this application. So it's really the best place for them to start. Right. And then from there, we work through the other types of financial aid that's available to them and try to notify them and keep them apprised of what's needed in order to make those other dollars available.
Now, FAFSA then being step one, you need to register, you need to basically become part of the system. So
right, you certainly have to apply for admission, you have to be accepted to the university. Right. That's the best way to get involved in the enrollment process and get assigned with an advisor that can help you. Some students have a variety of different dollars that they bring from outside sources, like our veteran population, or maybe outside scholarships from their hometown or their high school community. And so there's lots of other things that we have to work with them to coordinate it all together. And so some of those how-tos we've designed to help them walk through those steps.
Right. And when you're talking about those different opportunities, scholarships are something that students may not realize sometimes that, you're talking about all the differences because they feel sometimes confused. We have scholarships, we have grants, we have loans. How do you break it down into defining which each one is? Right.
We provide an award notification to every student each year so that they're aware of what they've been awarded. And we try to be very specific about what is a grant, what is a loan. We even have federal work study funding for students who work on campus in some cases. So even a form of work study, for employment can be part of a financial aid package. And so it really takes, for most students, a collaboration of all of those different resources to pay for college. It usually just isn't one thing that makes it all work. And then, of course, the family themselves have to work together to decide how they're going to finance the student's education, if they're going to help in some way, if there are payment plans that need to be developed where the parents or maybe the student has some of their own money that they're going to put
ready to pay
into
for
it.
The school, right?
And so there's lots of different pieces we can provide to helpful put those pieces together in a form of understanding so that then all of those dollars add up and hopefully their bill gets paid.
Well, of course, we're recording this in the summer and some viewers might have questions. Well, is it too late to apply? Can we still apply and try to get some financial aid for the fall semester? The weeks are, moving right along. What do you say if someone has that question?
Not too late at this point. We're certainly accepting new applications for the FAFSA. We certainly are processing applications as they come in. So we usually get quite a little influx for our late filers that start in August. So I would encourage them to start in July or June if they can rather than August, because that just gives us more time to work through some of the other details that might be needed from them and help alleviate some of the stress of waiting till the last minute and getting everything decided for them before it's actually due.
Are there some limitations on funding that's available in some cases for some of that?
Yeah, we do have some funds that are first come, first serve. Every FAFSA cycle year begins the October before the fall semester, which seems almost a year in advance. So that October 1st deadline or opening date is the best time for people to start for the next school year. But since we're way past that at this point, it's still not too late. We would just encourage them for the next year to do it before February 1st. So October 1 to February 1 is really the best time to get everything done to ensure they're qualifying for the most dollars possible.
But I know I see a lot of signs around campus, this is the time period, have you done your FAFSA? When you have workshops or something to help students, I don't quite understand what they want me to fill in on that form.
Right, we try to make students aware if they did have a FAFSA on file last year and they haven't yet applied for this year, we're reaching out to them with postcards and email correspondence, and sometimes we'll even make phone calls to them and tap them on the shoulder to remind them this is the timing to be getting this done, don't delay. Other times we will, in the fall, especially when that October timeframe comes around, we hold a FAFSA Fiesta, which is a big event we do over in the Student Center, and we kind of have a party for a day and all the people walking by, and we invite them to come in, and we usually have have prizes and try to really encourage the awareness that it's time to get this done, and earlier is definitely better than waiting.
What about parents? People who might be watching, they're the parents of a college student. What is their role in regards to the FAFSA? They might be, okay, you're talking about child, but what about the parents' role?
Right.
In the FAFSA?
Well, the parents typically have to provide some sort of tax information into the FAFSA. So they are
so they register and become part of the FAFSA as
They
well.
do. They have a signature component, and their information is part of the application process to determine their eligibility in some cases. But, I would encourage parents to let the student do as much of it on their own as possible, because this is their financial future, and it helps them take some stake into what's actually happening and how much college costs and how they're going to make it work. And it really should be a combined process.
Get the information from the parents, but the students really help carry it through.
And as once the student is here, the student's information is protected for privacy laws and things. And so it's hard for us to give information to the parents once the student is already an admitted enrolled student here, because the privacy laws prevent us from giving that to other third parties, including the parents. And so I want the student to be the first primary person to get the information. If they want to share it with their parents and talk it over with them, that's fine. But our primary communication is going to be with the student directly, because that's their sensitive information. And when you're talking about finances, sometimes that can be a little sensitive.
Right, I can understand that. Well, the different types of financial aid, we're talking about federal, there's state aid, kind of breaking down the different categories that people are looking at.
Yeah, you can slice and dice it lots of different ways. We talked about grants and loans and student employment, but there are federal resources like the Pell Grant and our federal direct loan program. There are also parent loans available to students through the federal government at fixed interest rates. From the state, we have an Access Missouri grant, which is a need-based grant that actually goes up to some middle income ranges, so it's pretty generous for our families. But you do have to be a Missouri resident to qualify for those. And then there's other scholarships and other types of funding that our state provides to our folks too, whether they're a non-traditional student or whether they're working on a specific program. And so we have to coordinate all those different requirements and different application processes, but try to steer them through the big picture, FAFSA, knowing the deadlines, and then being able to coordinate from there when it all comes together. How much is that going to mean the family has to pay?
And of course, there's different types of scholarships. I know you have a website that talks about that. There's a lot of different categories as we look. You have incoming scholarships just for freshmen and transfer scholarships. So.
Yeah, a lot of our incoming freshman scholarships are automatically awarded to the student based on their ACT score and their transcripts coming from their high school. So it's important when a student's admitted here to get those pieces of information in, because then that helps us make their scholarship awards to them. Transfer students also have an application that they need to let us know that we can consider them for transfer scholarships, and then of course those transcripts from those schools that they've attended before need to be here, so that we can determine.
That's an important step of the process. You have to have that proof of your grades.
Yep. And then beyond freshmen and transfer, we have a lot of performance-based scholarships for our theater and art and folks who write for the newspaper and some of those internal groups
Specialty
that have
areas.
talents and skills that we want to let those areas shine in. And then of course our foundation scholarships are our various generous donors who have given money to our foundation for investment into student scholarships. And so we award several $1 million in donor related scholarships too. And so there's an application for that as well. So really encouraging an incoming student of any type, or even a returning student, to make an appointment with their financial aid counselor or come in and talk to us to make sure that they're maximizing everything that's available to them.
You have a time period where students need to go to the website for those foundation scholarships and basically register to say, these are my criteria or qualifications.
And that aligns very, very well with the FAFSA. So October 1 through December 15th is the best time to apply for those scholarships for the next school year. Make sure that they're in that priority pool.
So this past spring, even though campus buildings were closed and students were studying from home, you still were able to award those type of scholarships, even though people weren't here. For this.
Yeah, we worked on things from home, and we collaborated with others on campus, and we worked with the departments internally to find the right candidates for those scholarships, and we continued to keep things rolling even though we weren't here.
Now, we talk a lot about those incoming students, but you also mentioned follow up on it. Even after you're in school, there may be some other scholarships to help you or other financial aid. It's not just year one. You're here for 4 years. What can you do throughout those 4 years?
Right. It's understanding what scholarships are renewable, and what do you have to do to be eligible for renewal? You know, do you have to maintain a certain GPA? Do you have to maintain a certain major? Do you need to reapply every year? You know, and every scholarship, especially
different
if it
criteria.
has different criteria. So it's important to understand that. So as your situation changes, you know how your funding is going to be impacted by those adjustments that you make, or maybe decisions that you are making that are taking you down a different path.
And then there's different guidelines they have to follow for the number of hours they're taking, the academic success and so forth, that you need to maintain that scholarship.
Right. So when a student drops a class for a reason, you know, maybe in the middle of a semester, part of the process is to come in and talk to financial aid just to make sure that they're aware of any parameters that might change as a result of dropping that class. You know, it doesn't stop them from dropping the class, but then they're well informed about what things may happen as a result of that drop.
Putting that together. Now, you mentioned work study. For our viewers, they might be curious, you know, explain what that means, you know, how that helps students working on campus.
Yeah, we are part of the federal work study program, which is a federal type of financial aid, and so we apply every year for funding that allows us to replenish Missouri Southern's payroll to hire students who work on campus who are financially needy. So probably, I would say it's a small percentage of our actual student workers that work on campus do qualify for federal work study funding. We have many of them that are financially needy, but we have a much smaller pool of money that actually comes from the government.
Versus the numbers, right?
And so fortunately, we have a generous allocation of student employment funds that aren't work study, where the university is willing to pay our students to help us run the operations here at the university as well. So we have probably close to 500 students that work on campus throughout an academic year, a regular academic year.
And being able to work and carry through.
And get to work hourly and take their classes, and, you know, work and school can be a pretty reasonable schedule without having the demands of you know, a supervisor that doesn't understand that school comes first.
So you're able to get your 20 hours or so maybe on campus. You don't have to have somebody saying, well, I want you here at work tomorrow. Say, no, I have classes. You know,
Right.
Working together like that and tying that together. So ongoing, you mentioned counseling. Let's talk a little bit about that service. That I know you have a staff that works together. And, you know, you have a number of people in your department. So tell me about your staff and how you reach out to the students on a continuing basis.
We definitely reach out to students on a continuing basis. I have a great department of folks who are very knowledgeable and have been experienced in financial aid for a while, and so many of them have different specialty areas that they work with students. So for example, we have 3 financial aid counselors that are designated to process students' federal aid based on the last name. And so A through G, H through O, P through Z, they all can have that one financial aid counselor that helps them with the FAFSA, helps them process documents each year, can help them understand changes in their enrollment or their eligibility for different dollars, and really get to know them as a person and help them navigate through the 4 years of school.
So that person would be the same if your letter initials
if your last name doesn't change. Yes.
Right. So you go carry through.
And so we hope to build some rapport with them so that they have a go-to within financial aid, because sometimes it is overwhelming and sometimes you don't know what questions to ask, and sometimes you may qualify for different money that you didn't know about before, and so the counselor can help them work through some of those situations and make sure everything's running smoothly. Now on the flip side of that, the counselors are also doing some proactive work, so they're working with our reception area to reach out to students who maybe haven't done a FAFSA yet or haven't turned in all the documents that we've been asking for. And so they're following up and making sure that those things get done so that the timeliness of things aren't causing them stress when the tuition bill comes due.
Right, right. And of course, that's something that comes the first of the semester. People, you know, that bill does come. So you need to, what do you have in line to help pay for that bill?
Right. And the more time we have to work on processing those things helps alleviate their stress, because they have the answers they need to make other decisions if they need to.
So as we're recording this, when August rolls around, they could say, I know what I'm looking at when school starts.
Right. We want them to be prepared as early as possible so that it can be a strategy of financing. If they need to get on a payment plan for a small balance that's remaining, the earlier they get on that payment plan, the more months they have to make payments. So that means their monthly payment is smaller. If you wait until August, you're really only going to have 4 or 5 months to pay it off before the semester's over. If you start now, you've got a few extra months to stretch out that payment.
So you work really closely with offices like the Bursar and the others on campus to help coordinate those.
Absolutely. The student accounts managers in the Bursar's office, we work hand in hand with them regularly to help coordinate what's coming in, and so that they know when the billing is going out that we've got all the financial aid on there that we need to for students, and help coordinate the timing of the funds. And then we're the ones that pull the trigger when money is ready to pay to the student accounts, so that they can either refund the excess to the students or make sure that the bill gets covered on our end.
The aspect of refunding the excess, some people might be curious, so you can actually get more financial aid than what the cost of going to school might be.
Yeah, if the cost of your tuition and program charges and your books is less than your actual financial aid available, then the third week of the semester, we will start refunding those excess dollars to students. So many times it's loan money. Right. They're borrowing some student loans to help them with living expenses or transportation costs or other kinds of things that they need to support themselves. Sometimes they do have an additional amount of grants that they've accumulated, and so they can use that money for living expenses and things like that. So we distribute those on a weekly basis, starting with week 3 in the fall and spring semesters. And so that's always an important time to coordinate with students, so that if they're expecting that money, they know they've got everything in place in order for it to happen when it's ready.
What about the aspect of loans as far as, I guess, the educational aspect, especially thinking of 18, 19-year-olds and you're getting a loan? That's the counseling involved with the responsibility of loans and what the consequences are and the paying back eventually of a loan.
Yeah, I think student loans are kind of a double-edged sword. They're available to almost every student who fills out a FAFSA, regardless of financial circumstances. So they're easy to get relative to other types of loans, maybe. But they're also so available that students can take them without really understanding the magnitude of what kind of financial burden they're putting themselves in for the long term. So if you borrow a student loan as a freshman and you're not going to graduate for the next 4 years, you don't have to make a payment on that loan until 6 months after you graduate. So that's could be a set it and forget it kind of thing. Right. And if you continue to do that every year, you can amass some sizable debt, and then when you get out of school, you're shocked by the amount that has grown to. And so we work with students up front to do some entrance counseling so that they understand the loans that they're getting, and we also do some peer counseling with students in those in-between years, so that sophomores and juniors are reminded of the different benefits of federal loans, but also understand how to budget for themselves and how not to take money that's not necessary if it is a loan, because they are going to be expected to pay that back later on. And we don't want any of our students to be overwhelmed with massive debt after leaving here if we can avoid it.
So at the end, after they're getting ready to graduate, there's that exit counseling. Here's what you're going to face and expect.
Yeah, and by then it's already done. So you can't really deny the amount that it's already accumulated to. Right. So if we can help educate them freshman, sophomore, junior year and help them control the amount that they borrow by declining it or maybe reducing it from the full amount to a lesser amount and only take the amount they need, I think they will be much better prepared in the future to pay back that debt and maybe not have so much debt, because we all know there's plenty of other places that they're going to want to spend that money when they graduate.
A lot of other debt can come through in their life.
That's right.
So did you have many questions when the government was dealing with the COVID bills, as far as there was something mentioned about student loans, waiving things and so forth?
Yeah, one good thing about federal student loans is there are a lot of benefit provisions built into the federal loan program. So even though it's easy for students to get, there are a lot of protections built into it. So if a student is unable to pay for a period of time, they can apply for a forbearance without any problem. And when all of the COVID stuff started happening and unemployment started, striking up, there were lots of built into the Federal CARES Act where student loans were automatically put into a deferment status for a period of time. So basically just giving everyone a break from paying their student loans for a bit without having to ask for it, just to give everybody a little bit of breathing room to get their finances in order, especially if they had become unemployed for some reason or had a loss of income. So the federal loan program, like I said, has a lot of benefits built in it already, but then Congress was quick to act and respond and say, you have a little bit of relief for a little bit of time. Yeah.
So forth. Well, what do you find as far as the most common questions that students may ask you when they're coming, or you or one of your counselors when they come into your office?
A lot of them just need to know where to begin and what do I need to do? Give me the checklist of things that I need to do. And we have a little brochure that we provide to our students. It's a Financial Aid 101, so that it has kind of the basic steps of how to apply, how to accept your awards once you've been offered them, because we do require them to accept or decline or reduce those offers.
Go online and click a button and say, yes, I'll take it.
Yep, LionNet houses all of their financial aid so that they can see it at any point in time, and they can watch it transfer to their student bill, and they can see how much extra they're getting back or how much they still have left to pay. So the how-tos are important in order to follow those steps and to make sure that they're checking all the boxes they need to check. And then a lot of students will be asking for additional money, sometimes in the middle of a school year. You know, where do I find more money? Or I'm having a financial crisis. What do I do? And that's where we really want that communication line to be open with our office, because we don't know they're struggling if they don't tell us. So asking their financial aid counselor, is there anything else that I'm eligible for that I haven't used? Or do you know of any other funding that's available? And many times we do have additional funding that's available. Sometimes there are outside scholarships that we are aware of we can point them to. We work closely with the Missouri Scholarship and Loan Foundation, which is based out of St. Louis, and they do a lot of support in helping students with emergency grants and a zero interest loan. And so we have some networks with other folks that we can make sure that we try to help them as best we can with all the things that we know are available.
So you don't want the financial challenges keeping them from completing their degree and
Certainly.
working together.
The main thing probably is to make sure they reach out to us if they're struggling, or if they have any questions, because we will certainly do our best to find the answers, or if we need to reach out to others to help maybe figure out a process that's troubling them, you know, we'll certainly do our best to try to get those questions answered for them.
Of course, everything seems to tie together on the campus. You talked about, you know, you have to be admitted, I guess being enrolled. So as we're recording this in the summertime, you need to be enrolled in those fall classes so you can be looking at, you know, what's available to help you with those anticipated bills for the tuition and so forth.
Yeah, and enrollment's open right now for anyone. So if you're not sure what your schedule is, you know, take a look and see if you can add a class or two. If you need to visit with an academic advisor, those folks are available to help get things going. But it helps us answer questions if we know what type of enrollment load you're taking.
Right. If you're in 12 hours, you're going to take 15 or 16, right?
Right, right. And that certainly gives us a better perspective of what the cost is going to be, so that we can put a target together of, okay, here's your financial aid, here's what your bill is, where's the gap, and help them figure out how we're going to solve that gap.
Well, for someone who's watching, what's the best way to reach you or your office this summer? I mean, people are working back on campus again.
Yeah, we are open. We do take walk-in visitors with social distancing in place, but we welcome emails certainly to our finaid@mssu.edu inbox. That's probably the best place to send initial questions if you're not sure who to ask. And our staff will route that to the appropriate specialist, you know, that can help them. Certainly call our main office line, 417-625-9325, and we have a series of prompts where they can guide their call to the specific person based on the request, whether it's about their student loans or their scholarships or their VA benefits or any other type of things that we do. We have some specialty areas that they can direct their call more specifically and get the right person.
Great. So
of course, they can always leave a message if they like. We'll take their correspondence however it works best for them, and we'll get back in touch with them and let them know what we can do to help them.
Oh, great. Well, Becca, I'd like to thank you very much for taking time to visit and sharing some information. And like I said, it's a busy time, as you say, wrapping up one year, preparing for the next year. So I appreciate you coming over for the interview today.
Well, I appreciate the time and getting the word out, because we definitely are available and we want to help students pay for college.
Great. And I'd like to thank you, the viewers, for joining us this week on Newsmakers. I'm Judy Stiles. Hope you can join me again next week at the same time on this station. We'll see you then.